What if I told you that a £100 million move could turn the Premier League's most foul-mouthed street baller into a meme? That the kid who once dragged Aston Villa to an FA Cup final and carried a whole city on his calves?
Grealish, Delph trying to get there, he might get there, he has got there! Aston Villa have turned this around, Fabian Delph!
Could join the most successful machine in English football, lift a treble, yet feel like a quieter, lesser version of himself. And yet, just when everyone thought the magic was gone, he found it again. Over the next 10 minutes, I'm going to show you how Jack Grealish rose from Villa's local hero, stumbled under the weight of the £100 million tag, and climbed back to remind defenders and the world why we fell in love with him in the first place. Picture this. It's the spring of 2014 at Villa Park. A kid barely out of his teens, waiting for his chance, looks straight out of a 90s football scene, socks rolled down, hair slicked back. Grealish had been at Aston Villa since he was 6 years old, but this time it was different. This was the Premier League. On May 7th against Manchester City, he finally made his debut. The scoreboard read 4-0 to City. And for most players on the losing end, that kind of night would be forgettable. But when Grealish stepped onto the pitch, it didn't feel like another late substitution. It felt like a signal. The way he wanted the ball, the way he carried himself, the way he drew fouls even in defeat, there was something special about him. Something Villa fans hadn't seen in years. In fact, Villa fans never saw Jack Grealish before. Notts County had. Months earlier, Aston Villa sent him on loan to England's third tier, football's wilderness. For most, it's where careers disappear, but Grealish lit it up. Dribbles, assists, moments of arrogance that belonged at a higher level. By December, county fans were chanting his name. At 17, he bent the games to his will, so when he came back to Villa, there was a buzz. This was a boy from Birmingham carrying swagger and street football confidence into the Premier League. By 2015, that confidence exploded onto the biggest stage, the FA Cup semi-final against Liverpool. Grealish owned the night. He registered 2 assists and put up a performance that sent Villa through to their first final of the century. And all of a sudden, the entire country knew his name. But what made him special wasn't pace or power. It was the way he carried the ball. He had this low center glide, a drop of the shoulder, and defenders were hacking him down just to stop him. By 2021, he'd been fouled more than any player in Premier League history in a single season, 167 times. They weren't stopping him, they were hunting him. For Villa fans, it was pure love. Their captain, their symbol, a local kid dragging them forward when the club felt stuck in the mud. He wasn't just playing football, he was giving them hope. But while they relished in his brilliance on the pitch, a different story was beginning to unfold. Because for every dazzling dribble, there was a headline waiting. And soon the golden boy of Villa would find out that talent alone couldn't hide the chaos creeping into his life. Relegation in 2016 turned Villa Park from a Premier League stage into a reminder of what had been lost. The stadium that once welcomed Chelsea and United was suddenly hosting Rotherham on a wet Tuesday night. For Jack Grealish, still barely out of his teens, it felt like the footballing world had shrunk overnight. The championship is unforgiving. Smaller pitches, tighter spaces, heavy challenges that don't make the highlight reels. It's where silky players either adapt or disappear. Grealish had to prove he wasn't just a Wembley night wonder. Week after week, he learned to ride the tackles, roll defenders off of his hip, keep his balance after late kicks to the shins. The glamour was gone. What remained was the grind, and it hardened him. By the winter of 2018, Villa were drifting in mid-table, and frustration was building. Then came the spring of 2019, and with it the return of a fully fit Grealish after a 3-month shin injury layoff. He came back wearing a protective guard on his leg and the captain's armband as if he'd been waiting for both. In his first game back, he scorched against Derby. Villa didn't lose again for the next 10 matches. That run dragged them from nowhere into the playoff places and eventually all the way to Wembley, where promotion was sealed. It wasn't just the goals and assists. It was the sense that whenever he had the ball, Villa suddenly had belief. Back in the Premier League, his influence only deepened. In the 2020 and 2021 season, He posted 6 goals and 10 assists in 26 games, numbers that barely told the story of how every attack seemed to flow through his right boot. Villa were often underdogs in possession, but whenever Jack carried the ball forward, the pitch felt bigger and the team looked braver. But the brighter the spotlight shone on him as a leader on the pitch, the harder it became to step out of it once the final whistle blew. The headlines began to follow him home, a hint that the fairy tale climb was about to face its first cracks. Jack Grealish's return to the Premier League with Aston Villa was the fairy tale everyone wanted to believe in. A local boy had dragged his boyhood club back to the top flight, captained them with swagger, and gave Villa Park a reason to roar again. The headlines loved it. The socks rolled low, the slick hair, the dribbles that left defenders on the floor. For a while, Jack was the league's darling. But when the headlines died down, something darker began to surface. The same charisma that made him a fan favorite often spilled over when the cameras turned away. In 2019, just days after urging the public to stay home during a COVID lockdown, a photo went viral of Jack sprawled out on the road next to a damaged car. It was a crash that made the front pages for all the wrong reasons. It was a glimpse of a problem that wasn't about football at all, a habit of losing focus just when discipline mattered most. Villa stuck by him. He apologized, promised to grow, and when he returned to the pitch, the magic was still there. But the whispers never fully disappeared. Great player, questionable habits. Fast forward to 2021. Manchester City arrived with £100 million, turning the Villa captain into the most expensive player in British football history. On the surface, it looked like the next chapter of a hero's story, the street baller finally stepping onto football's highest stage. But the old habits didn't vanish with the price tag. At City, Jack's role changed. The man who once carried Villa now had to hold the width, pass inside, press, and recycle. The freedom that made him electric at Villa was replaced by positional obedience, and his numbers dropped to just 3 goals and 3 assists in his first league season. While Pep Guardiola preached discipline, the tabloids feasted on nightclub sightings and mid-season trips to Ibiza. Jack would sparkle on Tuesday night under Champions League lights, then disappear in Saturday's league match. The champagne often came before the job was truly done. Pep's patience thinned. The more Jack tried to adapt, the less he looked like the player City had signed. By the 2023-2024 season, with Jeremy Doku exploding onto the scene, Grealish's minutes shrank and so did his influence. The boy who once carried Villa on his back was now a £100 million rotation piece. And when Guardiola finally told him, work harder or it's time to move on, it felt like the end of the road at City, but also the start of an unexpected redemption elsewhere. Grealish never did truly change. Every win, every trophy, every impact always followed him into the club with bottles of champagne. He declined on the pitch as he did off it. And when Pep finally got fed up, he quite simply asked him to leave. For most footballers, this would have been the end. But Grealish would go on to do something no one ever expected: change his life around. When Jack Grealish left Manchester City in the summer of 2025, the headlines didn't call it a transfer. They called it a rescue mission. For many, it looked like the final slide of a career that had promised so much and delivered too little for its £100 million price tag. But for Jack, this wasn't a step down. It was a step out of the cage. Everton, now under David Moyes and reborn at their new waterfront stadium, offered something City never could: freedom. No more staying glued to the touchline, no more rehearsed passing lanes. Here, they wanted the old Grealish back, the one who could slow a game with a shoulder drop and rip it open with a shimmy. From the moment he landed in Merseyside, something shifted. The socks were rolled down again, the grin came back, and so did the swagger in his first touches. On his home debut, he grabbed 2 assists, and Goodison, or what Goodison used to be, buzzed like it hadn't in years. Moyes trusted him as the heartbeat of the attack. Go make something happen. It felt like Villa all over again, but this time with the wisdom and scars from City's system. Grealish wasn't just dribbling for the cameras anymore. He was dictating play between the lines, releasing runners with perfectly weighted passes, carrying Everton forward when games were stuck in midfield traffic. Stats followed the vibe. Today, he is top 5 in the league for chance creation and dribbles completed. He also sits alone at the top for the number of assists. He won the Premier League Player of the Month award in his very first season with the club, something he couldn't manage at Manchester City. Defenders still foul him out of desperation. But now he makes the fouls count, turning set pieces into points. The same city discipline he once resented now blended with his natural flair, a street footballer with an engineering degree. For the first time in years, Grealish feels like a player reborn, and he's loving every bit of it. What's more, Everton climbed the table, and fans are singing his name again. Pundits have started whispering, he looks happy and dangerous. Jack's story has turned around again, and with the Euros around the corner, the talk isn't about his fall anymore. It's about whether the man who once lit up Wembley as a fearless teenager can be part of the team to lead England one more time. For Villa fans, he'll always be the captain who gave them belief. For City, the cog that helped win a treble. For Everton, the man who turned the lights back on. And for the rest of us, call it a comeback or call it a continuation. Either way, the ball is back in his hands, and this time it looks like Jack Grealish is the one deciding the rhythm.